Hello, I finally got hold of one of these Bonsai EPP flying wings. To tell the truth, this is actually what I wanted to get instead of the Tech Sumo at first. But there's a little bit of a problem with these wings, and the instruction manual tells you right at the beginning, it says Bonsai is a very popular EPP flying wing. And I know those clowns in Tokoroa have been buying a lot of them, and they seem to go in and out of stock on Hobby King all the time. And when I wanted to buy one at the beginning, they were not in stock, so I got a Tech Sumo instead. But then they came back in stock, so I got one anyway. And being very similar to the Tech Sumo, I don't really have a whole lot of information or feedback to give on the way you build it and fly it. But I thought I would make a video about this one because I've had a couple of people ask me about what would be a good wing to start with if you're learning. My neighbor is talking about maybe giving something a try, and my friend Sean in Japan is also, he's flying quadcopters a lot, but he's sort of said he might try a wing or a plane at some point. And this strikes me as something that would be a very good first plane for quite a few reasons. It's very cheap to put together. You can fly it in a fairly small space, which is good if you're in Tokyo, because you're kind of limited in space a lot. It's very light, so it's not going to break anything, and it's not going to break itself when it hits the ground either. So I would recommend this highly as a first plane. I probably should have got one of these myself as my first plane anyway. So I won't really bore you with too much of this, although I did take some photos. So I'll show you those since I took them. But as far as cost goes, here's the listing here. So it's the wing itself is under $24, and it comes with this piece already stuck on, and it's already, the two halves of the wing are already stuck together too. So it comes like that, and the battery strap is glued in already as well. I changed these to be on the top again, which I'll show you in a minute. And down here, I think it was one of the first comments. There's a guy here. He lists excuse me. He lists all of the things that he put it together with. So I just followed this because he said he could fly for 20 minutes full throttle, and I thought, wow, that sounds awesome. But the drawback, once I got all these parts and put it together and started flying it, I think the motor is really, really weak. Which on one hand is good for learner, and I didn't quite get that much flight time, I don't think, but it wasn't far off that. And yeah, it was very cheap. So if I was doing this again, I'd probably get a larger, more powerful motor, unless I was getting it for a learner. So I think I might let my neighbor have a go at this one once I've bashed it around a bit, and I'll leave this motor on because it is quite a good one for a learner. Anyway, so the parts that he mentions there are this motor. See how all of this stuff is quite cheap. And this motor, 10 grams, yeah, before I bought it, it already struck me as something that was a little bit weak, but it does the job just barely. So that's the motor there. Speed controller is this one. The guy that was commenting on that other and that other comment there was using a 6 amp one. 6 amp one. She's got something stuck in my throat. But I got a 10 amp one because I thought I might end up upgrading the motor, so that's why I got a 10 amp one instead. Oh, and also because the 10 amp one gives you a 2 amp BEC instead of a 1 amp BEC. I think I wanted to have a 2 amp BEC on the ESC, so that's why I got that one. Got a couple of 5 gram servos instead of 9 gram servos. I had some 9 gram servos, and apparently they do fit in there okay, but I thought I would get the 5 gram ones to keep the weight down and make the build a little bit easier perhaps. And the battery, get these things away. Look how cheap that battery is, $6. So there's a 2-cell 850, and it fits perfectly into the battery bay of the plane. But again, it's a while since I've flown anything with 2-cell, and 2-cell is a bit weak. I'm not sure if this motor can do 3-cell. Can it do 3-cell? Suggested power 2-cell, probably not a good idea to do 3S with this motor. But I definitely want to try 3S with the plane later on. I might put an 1806 motor on instead of this one that I have spare from my mini quads. So that all that stuff came from Hobby King, and I got a receiver. I already have a radio, of course, a FlySky radio, and I got this receiver because it's a lot smaller and I only really need 3 channels anyway. So this one I think is for radio controlled cars, but it's nice and small and light, so I wanted to try using this one, and cheap, of course. By the way, if anybody does go and buy these things, I never know if people are going to go ahead and copy what I'm doing here, but I'll just mention something about this receiver here. If you look down at the bottom, it says for all of those, it's compatible with all of those transmitters, including the one that I have, which is the i6 there. There's one option that you need to change on your transmitter if you're using the i6, so I'll show you that afterwards. But the thing to watch out for is that, see how it says GR3F receiver there? There is actually another listing on Banggood that looks almost identical to this, except it's a GR3E. And you can see here there's an F at the back. The other listing has an E here, and it does not have this AFHDS protocol, so I'm assuming that that one is not compatible with these transmitters, because it also doesn't list this big list of compatible transmitters either. So you want to make sure you get this one, which is the 3F, if you have a radio like me, which is one of these. So I'll have a list totaling up how much these parts cost, and I'll put this in there because if you're starting from nothing like my neighbor would be if he was getting all this stuff, you're going to have to get a radio too, and 47 bucks, I think. I really like these radios, as you probably know if you've watched my channel recently. So this will actually give you a spare receiver which you could use instead of using this one. I like this one obviously for the bonsai because it's so small. And you can actually get a 4-channel transmitter for about $10 cheaper than this, but the radio is something that you're going to use with other models probably, and 4-channel is very, very restrictive. You want probably at least 6 channels to start with, or to use with other models. So anyway, where's my spreadsheet? So this, if you total up the plane and everything that's on the plane, that's about $60 US. And if you got the transmitter as well, that's 106. That's only with one battery, and it's not including the shipping from Hobby King. So it would be maybe, I forget what the shipping was, maybe $10 or something. And you'd probably want a battery or 2 more. But this 106 or maybe 115 or so is what you're looking at to start from nothing, which I think is not too bad really. For you know, first plane, learner's plane. And I've just put the totals over here in New Zealand dollars, just in case anybody in New Zealand wants to grok that in their numbers. So it's 150 if you have no radio, 83 if you do. So yeah, I think that's not too bad price to start with. So I have some pictures here, don't I? Oh yeah, okay. So when I put this together, there's less work to do than the Texuma because the wing halves are already connected. But once again, I wanted to have the bottom of the plane flat and have these receiver and battery cavities on the top. So I cut them out just with a craft knife and glued them in there like that with some boogers. No, it's not really boogers, it's Gorilla Glue, but it puffs up like that and fills the space. It's quite nice. Then you just sort of slice them off at the bottom to make it smooth again. So it ends up like that, just the top gets pushed to the bottom. Quite nice and tidy. That's the 5-gram servos, they're in there okay. Motor on there, this motor mount is already attached, and I've put some hot glue around to reinforce it. It was only attached with CA glue, I think, which I don't know, I don't like it. Didn't like it too much just with CA on there. You need to cut some channels along the top of the wing for the servo wires, and they come to about this length, which is really quite convenient. And I also found another convenient thing was that receiver fits in there perfectly. Couldn't be more perfect. If you put it long ways, of course, or whatever you call that direction. And then these wires will be just the right length to poke into the top of the plug receptacle thingy there. And I just cut a little notch out of the edge of the receiver bay and brought the antenna over across through the wing like that. So the actual active part of it will be about here. So that left the perfect space for the ESC, as it happens, to go in there right next to it. And I was also able to fit this flush with the top. So this edge of the receiver is almost flush with the top of the wing. And when I got everything in there and tightened up or zip tied down, the only bits of it that are sticking up are these servo plugs and the plug at the front for the battery. So I thought that was pretty good little setup. The motor that I got, again, I didn't really like this motor overall. Apart from it being weak, it comes with this sort of a fitting for your propeller, and all of the props that I have a 5mm diameter inside there. Well, not all of them, but you can't use... Oh, can you use it? No, I don't think you can really use a 6-inch prop with this, unless you cut into the elevons a little bit, or get the prop to do it, as Bruce does. But yeah, if you want to use the 5-inch props, they're probably going to be a 5mm diameter in there. And this spinner thingy that comes with the motor has a 6mm one on that side and a 4mm one on that side, which was kind of annoying. So I took one of these plastic adapter thingies that you get quite often with the propellers. Not so much these days, but you used to get these with the propellers quite often. And I just used CA to glue it onto the 4mm side. And I haven't had any problems with this so far, but then again, I haven't really had any major crashes or anything either. The linkage to the servo horn, again, I didn't really like this a whole lot, because the way they want you to do it, for some weird reason, is you get pieces of linkage like that. I didn't cut this or anything, that's how it comes. So you get 4 pieces like that, and you get these fiberglass, maybe, or carbon fiber rods, or yeah, I think probably carbon fiber rods, and you're supposed to use heat shrink to bind them together. They get, the heat shrink is included. Presumably it is the kind of heat shrink that has adhesive inside, otherwise this would be just a terrible idea. I don't think it's a great idea anyway, but nevertheless it seems to work. So I had to cut this a bit shorter because I put my clevis thingy to where it was going to be at, the linkage was going to be at 90 degrees to the movement of the hinge of the elevon. So I cut this a bit shorter than what we see here. And I also used CA to glue this. Once I'd heat shrinked it, I just sort of dripped a little bit of CA inside the heat shrink to try and get it to hold together. I just didn't really trust it very much, but I haven't had any problems with it so far. So that's what everything looked like ready to go. I just smeared a bunch of hot glue on here just to hold this down so that it didn't vibrate or anything like that. And that's it. So yes, what else can we say? So this is what I meant about the angle of the linkage. So the way that the kit tells you to do it, or the instructions tell you to do it, is to put it there. But this works just as well, and I kind of like that it's at 90 degrees to the hinge. What else to look at? Nothing. I think I just showed you everything, didn't I? So you do have to glue these on. Again, I used Gorilla Glue there. That's really good glue for EPP. But other than that, I think what I just showed you was all of the assembly. I had to pull this off and bring it around to the top. Yeah, but that's it. So I'll show you a bit of flying footage. I think I complain about the motor being weak and the glide slope being very steep, but apart from that, it flies pretty nice. So I think I'll bash this around for a bit myself, and then I'll give it to my neighbour maybe to have a go with. And at some point this, yeah, another thing I don't like about this motor is you've got to use one of these prop savers, at least with the mount that they give you when you buy it. And this rubber band, I don't have any spares, and this is probably going to fly off and disappear at some point. So when that happens, I will replace this with an 1806 mini quad motor, and maybe get a 3S battery of a similar capacity, and that will probably balance out the heavier motor. And then we'll see how it rips around with 3-cell power. So I'm expecting that will be quite a bit more fun, but I guess that will be a story for another day. So, one more thing before I go to the flight footage. If you use that GR3F receiver, you'll find that you need to change one thing on your radio, if you have one of these radios, that is. So in the system menu under RX setup, you have this option here, AF-HDS2A, and this is the radio protocol for the receivers that have telemetry and they return data to you, and they have PPM and all the sort of the more advanced receivers like this IA6B that I usually use. That's the protocol that those radios use. Whoops. But you can't use that one. So go into that menu, and you can turn that off. And you'll see that when you do that, now you have no options down here. Whereas if I turn this on, now we have all these other options for PPM output and fail-safe and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So if you don't turn this 2A part of it off, you'll find that you won't be able to bind to that GR3F receiver. That's all. So I just thought I'd mention that because it sort of had me stumped for a while. Alright, let's give this little thing a fly. I've got a... Oh man, that motor is wimpy. This is a King Kong 5045 bullnose prop. Gives me a little bit more power than the 5040 that I started with, but not much. Wind is coming from over there. Let's do it! Whoa, gets bumped around a lot, and even though there's not much wind, I can't really make a lot of headway in that direction, this direction. Yeah, it really feels the wind a lot. It's only, I think, 160 grams or so, total weight. So it's not much, and it doesn't, I just turned the motor off, but well, it's actually gliding okay today. See if I can show you how terribly it glides. Oh, whoa, whoa. It's not too bad. Well, I guess the motor has enough power to do that. Yeah, but it's really quite shaking around in the wind. I think this is really only a calm weather plane. A bit like the Texumo, but even more so because it's so much lighter. I think my Texumo, even with the GPS and the autopilot and FPV gear on it,
still, it weighs about 550 grams, I think. So it's about 3 times as much as this. Still fun to fly. See if I can do a loop. I mean a roll. Definitely can't do a loop. No, you can do a roll of sorts. Not sure what else to say about it. It's basically like Tech Sumo, but doesn't glide very well. And the motor is just not right. It's kind of fun to see how close you can come to crashing without crashing. Whoa, I didn't do that. Yeah, so most of the time I'm at full throttle flying this, so I'm just flying it like that because that's what it needs. Meow. So I'd kind of like to see, I want to try this with a faster motor. That's what I'm thinking the whole time that I'm flying it. So I might have to make a little update perhaps when I change the motor to one that's actually going to push it along nice and fast. And that might make a difference to, it'll make it heavier because I'll have to compensate by putting some more weight up front as well. So that all round might make it a bit more enjoyable because it'll be able to get through the air, cut through the air a bit nicer. See if I can catch it. I was trying this the other day and I found that I had to, you got to keep the motor on almost the whole way. Alright, so I turned the motor off as I was catching it. That's how weak this motor is and how light the frame is and everything. But, yeah, that's quite fun. For the price too, it's nice and cheap. It's a little small battery, a little small ESC, a little small motor, small servos, everything's so small it makes it nice and cheap. Yeah, I like it. Anyway, I think I'm all done with my commentary, so thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.